I can't even say that for mine.
Just cold, cold and not beautiful.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am honoured to have with me today Sara Davison. She is the divorce coach, and she's going to be talking us through a little bit about her background and how to deal with divorcing a meanie, a narcissistic, psychopathic type of person in the cluster B personality disorder. Sara, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Very cool. So why don't we start with your background? How did you end up becoming a divorce coach?
Well, I've been coaching for 20 years now, pretty much. Straight out of uni, I decided that I wanted to stay in I love self-help. I love personal development. I'm a total geek for it. And I went on an Anthony Robbins course when I was 21 that my dad sent me on. And he was, Sara, this is going to change your life. You've got to go. And I was really skeptical, but I went along and I thought it was incredible. And I learned a load of things I just didn't think were possible. Like I could have my own business, because at school I wasn't very popular. I wasn't particularly bright. I wasn't particularly sporty. So I just didn't think I was going to really amount to much. And all the jobs at school were accountant, teacher, nothing that I really wanted to do. So I always felt like I was just going to have sort of an average kind of life and never be truly happy or find something that I loved. But when I went on the Robbins seminar, he said something that stuck in my mind. He said, you can be whatever you want to be. So I started asking myself some different questions straight away. I was like, well, what do I want to be? And, I had wanted to be either a ballerina or an archaeologist. And then I thought, well, maybe not. I'd always wanted to have my own business, but I didn't think I was clever enough. And I didn't think I didn't know what I would do or how I could do that. But I actually, after 6 months of having that, been to that seminar, I actually set up my own business, flying motivational speakers from the States over to the UK and putting on big events with like 400 or 500 people. And I was 21 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it went pretty well. So, and then because I was doing that, I got to work with actually Tony Robbins himself, Paul McKenna, Richard Bandler. I put on events for a lot of the guys. Jason Vale, the Juice Master. Some of you guys may know, they're amazing. He's amazing. He wasn't known at all at that time. He was just a little guy who's jumped a lot and talked about green juice. And now he's, got an incredible business and doing amazing stuff. So, I worked with all these people and I was lucky enough to train with them. And Paul McKenna invited me to train on his NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming course. And I did the Master Prac like you 18 years ago, which is a very long time. And then, so then I'm a total NLP geek, loved it. And then got into coaching. And then I set up a global training business with my ex-husband. And that went super well. We had an office in Sydney, office in London. It was great. Had my son. And when my son was 1, I realized that my husband didn't love me anymore. It was questionable whether he ever did love me, actually. But at the time, my whole world fell apart. And I was like, wow, if I'm struggling this much and I'm immersed in techniques on how to manage my own emotional state, how does everybody else cope? So, it was tough. It was tough times, and I had to really dig deep. And I looked for help. How do you cope with this kind of trauma? And then I basically decided I was going to put my own program together, combine my breakup, which was very acrimonious, very difficult. We had 2.5 years in the High Court. And my ex met someone. Well, he started a family with someone weeks after we'd broken up, and she was then a big part of our lives. She was then made a director of our business. There were a lot of things that were happening that were very difficult for me to cope with. And then obviously then I had to have my son over every other weekend to this young girl, and she was beautiful, which never helps. It always helps if they're not. And she was, much younger than me. And anyway, it was a tough time. And for those of you who've ever been through a breakup, you're going to know what I'm talking about. And so I basically decided to combine my experience with coaching with my my divorce experience and see if I could put something together to help me get through what I was going through and the trauma, the upset, the pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal. you know, all those things, the lack of a future, the loss of a business, becoming a single parent, the conflict, there was a fair bit of that, and the legal side, which is just a whole nother world. So yeah, so that's what I did. I created a program to get me through, and then my lawyer started referring me her clients, and I got a book deal, and then yeah, a TV show, and it just kind of took off because I'm really the only person doing what I do, and it's actually, I love doing it because it actually turns something that was really traumatic into something that actually now helps a lot of people. And when I see other people going, oh, that really works for me, well, that's why I do it, really.
That's really cool. Do you think we should start a support group just for NLP master practitioners who got crushed by bad relationships, who were sat there going, how the fuck does anybody deal with this?
Yes. Kind of think you should, you know, and people used to say to me, well, you're a coach yourself.
Yeah.
I remember I was walking down Kensington High Street with Paul McKenna because we were doing the training course, and I said to him, people keep saying to me, coach yourself, you're supposed to be this NLP person. Yeah. And he said, sorry, if you were a surgeon, you wouldn't operate on your own back, or so you just got to, you know, ask for help when you need it. And that was one of the things I think it took me a long time to actually ask for help, because I thought I was supposed to be able to fix everything.
Also, if you were a surgeon and you were walking down the street and somebody stabbed you and disemboweled you, there wouldn't be a load of smart asses around you as you're lying on the floor, bubbling, fighting for breath. Why didn't you fix yourself, mate? That would be a big...
Yeah, exactly. So I thought, okay, well, I just need to get a bit of help here. And yeah, I mean, it helps if you've got some good family and friends around you, that's for sure.
What type of advice do you typically find you hear yourself repeating again and again in the early phases of coaching people through a difficult divorce?
Surround yourself with good people.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people are caught up, especially a lot of my clients coming out of abusive relationships, and they find that their support group of people that they've hung around with out of habit rather than people that they choose to hang out with. Quite a lot of them have been isolated from people that they, you know, even their own parents or close family members outside of their marriage. They find that there's you know, they've been isolated and they're hanging around people that they don't really gel with or don't really help or support them. So it's about getting back in touch and creating that support group of people that genuinely care and will be there and be constructive.
Is this because they're hanging around with people that maybe weren't selected by them but were selected by the person that they were with, or is it a byproduct of the isolation, do you think? Why do you find that people are often ending up in a situation where they don't have a strong support group, do you think?
Because I think they're embarrassed. I think a lot, I mean, I deal with any kind of breakup, but a lot of my clients are coming out of difficult, abusive relationships. So the people in that bracket I'll find that they're embarrassed because they don't, I mean, a lot of them won't know it was an abusive relationship. I mean, a lot of them will just feel very low, no confidence. They will blame themselves still for everything. And they won't have shared with the outside world what's going on behind those closed doors. And so, I mean, I had one woman couple of weeks ago who has been separated. Her husband has moved out a year ago and she hasn't told her best friend that he's moved out of the house.
Why? That's really strange.
She's ashamed and embarrassed, and she thinks it's her fault and she thinks she's a failure. You know, it's been really tough. It's
an indelicate question, but what sort of age group is she in?
She's in her 40s.
I think that's a factor, you know. I think it certainly seems to be trickier to do as you get older. It's not like, I don't know, there is maybe a little bit more embarrassment. Like if you're 25 and that happens, people go, oh well. It's other people's reactions that make it tough, I think. If you're 25 and that happens, people go, oh well, there's plenty more fish in the sea. If you're 45 and that happens, people are looking at you like, oh my God.
Well, you know, but it's not true statistically. The people, the age group, the demographic that are getting married more, where the marriage rate is actually going up, is the over 50s.
Is that true?
Yeah, the silver splitters are leading the charge on remarrying and getting married. It's like that age group, it's going up, whereas every other age group is sort of slowing down. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? So no one.
Excuse me 1 second. My room thinks there's nobody in here because I'm not moving. Which is annoying. I'm just going to put the lights back on.
That's hilarious.
These are new offices, and I've not quite sorted everything out in here, but there's some sort of like energy saving thing on. Every 2 minutes, I'll just wave. Key points, some emotional points, and I'll suddenly just do that.
Okay. Star jumps will do it.
So you said the age group that is marrying the most now is the over 50s, and presumably this is statistically they'll mostly be remarrying.
Yes, yeah, mostly remarrying. But it's interesting because before, at that age, like in your 50s, going into your 60s, you'd be thinking, okay, well, slippers and blue rinse, if you take back 20, 30 years. Yeah. Whereas now there are dating agencies and apps just for this age group. The dating networks that my clients go to are really good fun for that age group. It's incredible. They have more fun than a lot of the 20-year-olds actually, because they know what they're looking for. A lot of them, they've done the kids thing, they've got some money behind them, or even if they haven't, like they know who they are as a person. They're not looking for anyone else to support them.
A few times that I've seen people that I know at close quarters over the age of 40, three occasions over the age of 40, and they married again, they were definitely noticeably happier on the second marriage.
Wow, that actually goes against statistics though, because
really?
Yeah, 42% of first marriages end in divorce. It jumps up to I can't remember exactly, something like 60-something% of second marriages, and 73% of third marriages end in divorce. But they're people that haven't been to see me.
73% of third marriages end in divorce today.
Yeah. But they're the people that haven't been to see me, obviously. But they're people that haven't learned from the mistakes. They haven't, because most of my clients, when they come into my clinic for the first time, they have 2 criteria for selecting a new partner. Yeah. 1, they have a pulse, and 2, they show them one sign of affection. And then you get what I call the limpet effect, where they're like, I'm saved. I'm never going to be on my own ever again. Someone's going to love me now. And they just go for that person because it fills the gap and the hole that they need, because they're so hurting inside.
Who's doing that? Did you say that's most of the clients you're dealing with who've been divorced, or when they go to their second marriage?
No, when they in the initial aftermath of the breakup.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And then when they start dating again, when they're brave enough to get out there and start dating again, that is it. They're looking for a pulse and one sign of affection, and that is their criteria. That's it. So, they'll admit it.
You're kind of describing what most codependents do when they get into a relationship. They need like a pulse, 1 or 2 little bits of affection, perhaps a smattering of a compliment one day was given, and then they just, we just attach like that person is the most wonderful thing ever on the basis of very little. I've reviewed my previous relationships. I'm like, why did I cast myself headlong into these things when any sane person from the outside would have seen that perhaps waiting longer would have been a good thing? Because she was nice to me once.
Yeah, that's very true. I did it, but I had a more of a love bombing, I think, at the beginning. So I was overwhelmed by how amazing it was. And then that peters out, doesn't it? And then you're left thinking, I can't remember the last day I got a compliment, but.
Yeah, there was in both of my long-term relationships that went horribly wrong. There was, I think when women love bomb men, it's probably a little bit different. It's probably not. It's kind of culturally normalized for a man to sort of love bomb a woman. For a woman, what they'll do with men is sort of be the woman of his dreams. So they'll scan him, they'll figure out what he's into, and then become like a virtual reality avatar of that based on the guy's values. It's love bombing, but it probably needs a different term when the gender reversed. I think it's not like they were singing me songs and sending me flowers, though I wish they had. A man might appreciate being sung a song once in a while.
Really? Oh my god.
I would be really freaked out. I'd be like, this is awkward.
It might depend on the quality of their voice, maybe. But anyway.
When you're coaching people through particularly difficult relationships, what proportion of that do you think is because they're actually dealing with somebody who might be personality disordered? I'm just asking you to guess, really, which is a bit irresponsible of me, but what sort of proportion do you think it is?
A huge proportion, actually. Yeah, huge. I'd say over 80% of my clients have experienced some kind of abuse, and I run retreats, and I keep them pretty small, and I usually have between sort of 10 and 12 people on those, and I would say minimum of 80%, 80% of them will have experienced it, if not 100%.
80 to 100% of people on retreats, you think they're coming off the back of what would be considered emotionally abusive relationships, and so highly likely to be with personality disordered people.
Yeah,
that is a huge proportion.
Yeah. And I don't know whether it's because that's where an area that I specialize in, so they will come to me, or whether, I mean, there's lots of different factors to consider out there. But I mean, I know the last one, it was 100%, and I was blown away because there were men and women in the room, and it was unbelievable. Yeah.
They're all, excuse me, they're all describing Signal the Plane. That move is called.
Right.
Yeah. They're describing situations that you would recognize as being emotionally abusive, or even so far as to say this is narcissistically abusive.
I mean, sometimes, yeah. I mean, I would say narcissistically abusive, most of them. I mean, with any divorce, even the most amicable people, when you start talking about finances or where the kids are going to live, it's going to bring out the worst side of anyone, because you're going to be, you're fighting for survival. It's your lifestyle. It's, the things you love most in life. So everything's under threat. So it's going to bring out the worst side. So there are difficult divorces, or breakups, where people are negotiating and it gets a bit nasty. But what I'm talking about is people coming out in kind of a confusion, not understanding the term gaslighting, for example, but then talking and sharing stories with the group, which are clear classic examples of gaslighting. And some people will be a bit further down the line than others, because what I find is when someone sort of understands that they've come out of an abusive relationship, they're healing, and they get it, and they're doing things to process that. The initial stages, when you first kind of start to come to terms with it, that's quite a difficult point, because some people feel, embarrassed, humiliated, like an idiot. They're ashamed. So quite often we get a lot of that coming up at the retreat. It can be. I mean, you get all sorts, and I had a 23-year-old pop star from California who was in an extremely, it was a very difficult relationship with an American guy, and then a 74-year-old guy who was coming out, just announced his retirement at the same time his wife announced she was leaving. And that you get such a wide spectrum of people, from policemen to teachers to wealthy entrepreneurs, all sorts of people in one room. But it's very interesting, their stories. There's so much that unites them, and the pain and the trauma they go through. There's so much, and we all cope with it in different ways. But ultimately, a lot of us are going through the same things.
There is there's a difference, isn't there, between somebody in a divorce, it's getting very emotional, it's getting very fractious. I imagine, if there's kids involved, that's going to really, really wind people up. And then they might have narcissistic defenses. That doesn't mean they have a personality disorder. It means they're stressed out and pissed off.
Yeah.
So they'll behave in a bad way. But when it's actually the relationship issues that led to the divorce are things like gaslighting, and the person feeling like they don't know which way is up, and they're very, very confused, and they show the classic symptoms of narcissistic abuse. That's a little bit more worrying, isn't it? That what you're describing does sound like people coming out of a relationship with either a narcissist or perhaps even a psychopath.
Yeah, I mean, definitely had that on the course. And there are a lot of clients that I see in my clinic who will come in who, are just having a tough time with the breakup. They're not all going through that extreme.
Yeah.
But there's I think what's overwhelmed me since I've been doing it is there's so much more than you think. It is so common, and still people don't understand. They still don't know. They can't identify. Yeah, and then you get the other people who think they are, but they're not. It's just oh, he's this and she's that, and but there is a normal part of that in divorce. But divorce is a very difficult thing, because in order to get divorced, you have to share so much personal information, and you have to share financial information. And a lot of one of the biggest problems is that mainly women, I don't want to be sexist, but it is mainly women, they don't have control of the finances, especially in a narcissistic relationship. So when they're going through a divorce, they are completely dependent on the other side to share that financial information. Now, if a narcissist knows you want that information desperately,
Yeah.
Problem.
But
And
at that point, they go, "Oh, that's fine. You can totally have all that."
of course they
And
do. Yeah,
my
they
accountant has
quite
drawn it all up for you. It's very easy for you,
right.
or maybe not.
Most of them say, we don't need a lawyer. I'll make you a very fair offer.
Now stop it! Don't damn your eyes. Yeah. Oh, it's coming back. Oh, it works. Oh, I thought it was working. It wasn't. Please excuse me. Is them saying you don't need a lawyer? Is that common? Do you hear that a lot? Because I've been chatting to a mate of mine recently, and her current husband is saying we don't need a lawyer. We don't need a lawyer. And I'm like, you do. Everybody does.
Well,
Have a grown adult in the room who's a professional who will assist you with this. Do you hear that a lot?
yes. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow, she's great. She brought us conscious uncoupling, which I love the idea of. In the lights. Conscious uncoupling is great because if everyone could do it, that would be perfect.
Right.
But unfortunately, we can't all go on holiday with our ex, and we can't all go around for dinner and have Christmases together. It just doesn't work like that. And most families, you want to move on. It's actually healthy to move on and have some distance. But also, if you can be friendly, that's the way forward. But most of my clients are doing what I term aggressively severing. And when you aggressively sever,
From conscious uncoupling to aggressively severing.
yes, and that is what I did. And even if one of you wants to be amicable, if someone is hell bent on withholding or being confusing or whatever it is, it's very difficult. So it's quite common in the early part of that to be saying, look, let's just, especially if the person is suggesting no lawyers controls the finances.
Right.
And my advice is always find out what you're legally entitled to from a lawyer, because it's not about gold digging or getting, taking him to the cleaners. It's about finding out what you're legally entitled to. Asking for 50% is not you, trying to, damage somebody else's life. It's actually the law in this country. So find out what the legal system is. Then you can always say, look, I don't want to go for all of that. You have that. I'm going to take this. But at least you know. So I always say, get a lawyer. And, if you don't know all the finances, then that is a bit of a disadvantage, especially divorcing a narcissist. So, usually I would suggest that they do a bit of research before they announce they're leaving or before it gets to that point, so they can get their ducks in a line.
There is a paranoia of people, an epidemic of people saying they're the victim of narcissistic abuse or psychopathic abuse when they are not. And that's something that we need to be careful of. But it is a little bit of a red flag for me when you're describing a situation where one person in the couple cannot abide the idea of a conscious uncoupling where it's friendly and nice and wants to make it hard. That is pretty narcissistic. I mean, there's no advantage to me in doing that other than to make you suffer. There is no, I'm just being childish. I mean, it does sound a little bit cluster B-ish to me.
Yes.
From the outside.
Well, yeah. I think the premise is everything we have is mine. That's right. Kind of where they're starting from. So I'm not giving you any of my stuff. But the law, if you're married in the UK, is that everything is split 50-50. Whether you came, from the minute you got married or started cohabitating together, then after that, everything is split 50-50. So it isn't theirs. And it'd be kind of them to give you a little check for however much to get a little house somewhere, and have a nice little life. Now, a good offer for a girl like you. Yeah, heard that, didn't like that. That's the sort of thing that you have to go, you know what? We need to find out, get the best legal representation that you can afford and get some advice. It only needs to be an hour up front, and some of them will do you half of that for free to see if you become a client in the long run anyway. But get some advice, find out what you're entitled to before you are influenced or make decisions, because that's the other thing. When you're in that overwhelm of all those different emotions, you've got to make these life-changing decisions, and obviously you're more vulnerable to settling, either because they're using tactics on you to make you settle or to make you feel vulnerable, or if you don't settle now you might lose the house, it's a big risk, or I heard it all. It's getting the legal advice is so crucial, and then you can at least then you know what you're entitled to, and then you can make decisions from there.
I'm a big believer in professional support. I think it's what if if you can afford it, you should get professional support from an outsider who deals with this all day, every day. It's got to be of use, like to, as you say, at least to know. Do you think, like you're saying, you're in the UK, you're entitled to 50%? And I've had this conversation with people over the years. I only know that because I had it drummed into me by people who are going through divorce, and they seem to be a little confused about that. Do you think it would help, like, if people actually knew what marriage was more thoroughly before they got married? Do you think that would help?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, churches do marriage courses and things, so they teach you how to communicate. But I think, yeah, prenups are definitely a thing that people should consider before they get married. Just understanding, if we did break up, I know it sounds unromantic, but there is a business side to marriage, because you do have to manage the house and the budget and everything else. So you're going to have to work together as a sort of a business just to run the home. So it is a good idea to look at it from that view and understand, if we were to break up, what would that look like and how would it work? Because the statistics aren't in your favor if you get married.
So if with this 50% thing, that's from the day of your that you are married legally, moving forward, whatever wealth is accrued within that time, both of you are entitled to 50%. Doesn't matter who earns it or what it is, you're both entitled to 50% of it.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't give legal advice, but I mean, my understanding of it is that as soon as you're moved in together, then from that point forward, what is created whilst the two of you are together should be equally shared at the end. Now, I think there's, if your mum dies and leaves your inheritance or whatever, I think there's but that's generally the rule, which is why you should check out your situation, because everybody's different. If you go into a relationship with a load of money or a house and they live in your house, then obviously you want to just protect yourself by understanding, and then you can make decisions. It doesn't mean you don't give them half the house. It just means you understand where you are when you start.
What I think I'm hearing you say is that I should marry somebody who's very wealthy, like a very wealthy woman.
That's what I said.
Thank you. I'll take that to heart. I'll start looking for very, very wealthy women. When it comes to the issue of children, as I mentioned earlier, I imagine that's very, very emotionally draining and difficult for people, and we know it's driven people to suicide, getting access to their kids. What kind of, have you had much experience of having to coach through people with the difficulties of that?
Yeah, and it is really, really hard, actually. I mean, the courts have changed a lot over the years. So, before it was a known thing that women would use the children to then, against the father. And obviously, usually it's the father leaving the home if it's a family home. So therefore, him coming back in to get access to the kids or arranging that is harder. If there's not so much money in the pot, maybe, the wife's in the house, so he's got to have a small flat. Is that practical for kids? It's very difficult. However, the pendulum has swung so that, 50-50 has become, sometimes quite a common thing with divorce. But then, what I struggle with and have a real bugbear with the court system is that it's very difficult for them, because it has to be general. You can't have a little nuance for every single person walking in. So it tends to protect the dysfunctional rather than the functional.
Okay.
And it is scary, because if, for example, if there's a narcissist, they can play the system very well. It's not set up to detect those kind of situations, and you can be protected very easily if you're a narcissist in the system. It's very difficult to unpick that and to persuade judges, and it's just, I mean, a lot of judges, I suppose, come through that. They see a lot, but the personality type to be in charge and be making decisions and things, again, you've got to question the people in power in some of these positions. Right. So it's a minefield, really. I struggle with it with the court system a lot. I don't think they haven't got it right yet. Okay. I'm not saying it's an easy job, but I think they should all be, trained in, understanding personality disorders, because in courts, for example, both parents will go in and one will say their story and the other person will say the other, and most judges will say, right, he's saying that, she's saying that, probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Now, you and I both know, if you've got a narcissist and a codependent in the room, and you've got the narcissist saying this is the truth, and then you're saying, well, this is the truth, and they go in the middle. Well, they're so far out from where the truth actually is.
It's going in the middle between total fucking lunacy and some representation of the truth that looks like the truth. Yeah.
Yes. And obviously they're very charming, very persuasive.
Yeah.
So that's where it falls down. And with children, I guess that's the only time. I mean, if you that's where I think the court really struggles with the kids. And in normal relationships, if you break up, the kids are going to be difficult, but they can cope with that. They can cope with that. They have systems now in place where the judge will rule and make rulings, and they will encourage the parents to work it out amongst themselves. And I see a lot of parents dealing with conflict. And in the beginning, because it's so raw, it is difficult because no one signed up to being a half-time parent. I'll see them one weekend, and you don't sign up to that. But there are actually some positives from that. There are some good things from that. And so, it's about just as time goes on and different techniques, you can get people to take a step back and you work together. So it's really what's about the best interest of the kid, really. But the court system has a long way to go when it comes to dealing with a narcissist in those situations.
You said something, don't do that. This is a bloody conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. Intolerable. I do not accept this. You said that the court system favors the dysfunctional.
Well, it protects them because mud sticks. And if you say enough lies and you back it up with enough fake news, it becomes evidence that has to be considered. So there's no, there's just no recognition of lying. And in fact, it pays to go in and lie in some cases because mud will stick. So if you've got a case that isn't really justified or there's a problem and you lie, it muddies the waters so much that it can be very difficult for the judge to see what is the truth and what isn't.
I suppose this is a problem with any sort of institution that seeks to do good, is there is a kind of a naivety that with which it has to be done. It's one of the things I complain about with psychologists. I'll complain to anybody who listens to me, which is nobody now. Nobody wants to hear me fucking go on about it. But the psychologists, especially research psychologists, not the people who are getting their hands dirty with human beings, but those who are dealing with rats and mazes and writing papers, the way they talk about psychology is so naive. It's like they've never considered the possibility that a client would lie. They've never considered the possibility that when you say to somebody, please fill out this self-reported questionnaire of how you think and how you feel, the person reading it might go, well, I want you to think you're a pretty researcher. Ooh, I like the look of you. I want you to think of me as better than I am or different than I am. And that people would like. It's kind of woven into the fabric of every institution that seeks to do good, or because the ultimate goal of a court is to deliver justice. It's to try and do good. There kind of has to be, it's that naivety is sort of woven into it, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm hoping though, I don't know about you. Are you hoping? I'm hoping that things are changing. I'm hoping that with everything that's going on in today's world.
I was saying I hope only for doom and for horror.
Pardon?
I only hope for the worst and that everything will get worse. But you're more hopeful. Sorry, I interrupted you. Carry on.
No, I just think I think the things are changing. I think awareness is increasing. I think for me, every time there's I don't know if you saw Dr. Foster that was out last year, and then recently The Cry, which just finished last weekend. So if you saw that drama on TV, brilliant. And it's putting those issues, and that personality disorders up there so people can see it. And every time they run a drama like that, my clinic gets super busy because people are like, I think that might be me. I think that's how I feel sometimes. So, I think hopefully with awareness increasing about what it is, then maybe there'll be more, people will start to change things so they can just be more aware so they're not taken advantage of.
Well, the judges and the solicitors are sat on the same settees watching the same programs that we are. Everybody is talking mental health now. I mean, I'm in these new offices and the walls are thin. I can hear the people chatting next to me. It's a sales team and they're chatting mental health 3 or 4 times a day. It's got nothing to do with the work they're doing. People are very, very aware of it as an issue. And, narcissism, most people know that there is such a thing as narcissism, and it means that people will lie. I think the difficulty is it's the notion of not to go off on a tangent, but you just made me think that there has to be sort of leaning towards a dysfunctional. The very idea of a witness testimony, it's biblical. It's down to Christianity, which is where our legal system comes from. The idea that you swear on the Bible, so we're naively assuming, of course, that you are going to bear witness truthfully, or else you'll be stoned to death in other times. So yeah, it is. I can see it being a problem, but yes, I agree with you. I am hopeful that people will become more literate about this kind of thing and more aware of that. Why do you think so many people are getting divorced now? Like the numbers are going up.
Yeah, well, I think we live in a society where we're always looking for the next upgrade. We're looking for something better. We don't settle anymore. If you don't like something, you change it, you get something else, swap it for something which you think looks better, or so I think there's a lot of that. I think with the internet, with dating apps, it's very easy, like with the Ashley Madison website, the number of married people that were on there. It's just easier to meet people, to to see a better grass is greener option. I also think we don't really commit. We don't have those old-fashioned values where it was for life. We see so many people in our culture of celebrities. You see J-Lo with some really hot guy, and then he leaves her, and she's okay because 2 days later she's just some other hot guy, and then there's a
23-year-old dancer.
Yeah. But it just looks so easy. You don't see what I sometimes see behind the scenes with that, the tears and the pain and they just put the gloss on it and stick them out there. And I think people think it's easy, but it isn't. Divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one, and it is a really painful experience. Some people navigate it better than others, and some people can because they're rational, normal people and want to do the best for each other, and the relationship has fizzled out and the kids come first. Other people maybe don't have that outlook, and it's another way of control, because even though maybe the narcissist has chosen to leave or has done things in a certain way which has left their partner no choice but to walk away, there's still that control. I can take you to court, I can hide information, and then ongoing, if you have kids, they can use the court system as well, if you don't do this, I'm going to take you back to court. If you don't do this, I'm going to take you back to court. Bear in mind, every court appearance, if you have to be represented by a barrister, minimum 5k for the day. So it's ridiculous, but it's in a very I'm telling you.
What did you just say to me? How dare you? How very dare you? 5k?
Well, you can look at that. If you've got to have a barrister, you've got to have a lawyer to help you prep for it. You've then got to pay your court fees, or if they're taking you, maybe not. But it could be anything from 3 to 5k, maybe more. You don't know. It depends what it is. I'm
having dogs. I really like dogs. I think they're all right.
I saw your dog. You got what's his name?
Well, I'm around a lot of dogs. I try and be around as many dogs as I can. I just posted Daisy's on Instagram. She's an Instagram. She's an IG model, actually.
Ah.
Yeah, she's always posting belfies. She's really highly narcissistic. Very, very, very vain. She's like, "Am I pretty? Yes, you're pretty. Stroke me then. God damn you." She's very demanding. Very demanding. She does that thing with her nose. They jam the nose under your hand and then tell themselves that you're stroking them. Stroke herself with your hand. I didn't realize quite the potential scale of the expense. So apart from the fact that you've accumulated wealth and then half of it is split, just the process of divorcing is going to cost a small fortune.
Oh, the process of, look, there's ways of doing it. There are ways of doing it if you are smart and you can get on that will minimize the cost. And I highly recommend those ways. And they are, you can, keep the cost very, very low. However, if somebody is controlling and wants to make it difficult, then it can be ridiculously expensive. Some divorces cost millions of pounds. It's insane what can be done, because the lawyers obviously are incentivized.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of lawyers, and they're all great, but they are incentivized. That's their job. They make money that way. So if someone says, "Oh, I'm upset about this," I'll write you a letter. Okay, I'm going to write you the letter. 250 quid, letter sent. Right. Now, if you want to talk about what happened when that letter arrived, or our next response to a potential another letter coming back, another 250 quid, 650 quid. it can spiral, which is why, you know, it can be very difficult for people, and it's a very easy way to control somebody. If you control the finances and you're in a stronger financial position, you see people being, I mean, I had a client the other day, and I've invited some people along to the event we're doing on Sunday that are going through just this, that they are out of money, and they are trying to represent themselves against some top barristers, because they're in this situation. They're being dragged through the courts.
And so the person they're actually divorcing is a barrister, or they've hired a barrister.
So the person they're divorcing will be able to afford the barrister.
Oh, I see.
Situation. And she had a barrister, but she's exhausted because it's like round 5 or 6, but it's over a child. So, you know, she needs to go. She needs to do these things. But, you know, and again, it's so difficult. It is so difficult and heartbreaking. And, you know, I'm sure, they have the social workers in place in court now, and they will help, you know, the CAFCAS only, but they're so overwhelmed with the work. You know, some of them are amazing, and some of them not so familiar with some of these very charismatic, charming people that can, you know, say what they need to say. So it's a bit of a Russian roulette sometimes.
Yes, yeah, I could see that. It's as you say, like a Russian roulette scenario. So if somebody wanted to get help from you, they're going through a difficult divorce, what would be the best way of them reaching out to you and getting in touch?
Yeah, I guess my website, saradavison.com. If they visit that, then they can see my retreats or book some coaching with me. Yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the info bar, guys, if you want to check out Sara Davison's site. And the link is right there in the more info bar. I highly recommend that you do. And we'll be in London on Sunday, right?
Yeah, Sunday.
You shall meet the Sam Vaknin.
Yes, I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, no, I was talking to Richard, the video guy. He's really excited to meet him as well. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. Plus, I've got my coaches are coming down from Liverpool, so it should be a really, really good day. I'm looking forward to it. Right. Well, thank you very much.
It's a great dynamic to watch for people. I think it'd be really, really helpful for a lot of people. So
yeah, I hope so. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. It was fun.
Really, really, really helpful. I know that people in the comments are going to have questions, so what I'll do is I'm going to round up some of those questions, and I'd like to do this again maybe in a few weeks if you're available for it.
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, guys, if you want to find out more, as I say, Sara's website link is there in the more information bar. I'll pin it as a comment later on this evening. If you can come on Sunday, I recommend you do. We do still have some seats left. Just message helpdesk@spartanlifecoach.info with the subject header waiting list. I've still got a few tickets there. All right. Thank you very much for that, Sara.
Thank you.